I've got good news and bad news. Here's the bad news. Most protein bars are packed with sugar and unpronounceable ingredients. The good news? There's a better option. I'm Will, and I created IQ Bar plant protein bars to empower doers like you with clean, delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel. IQ bars are packed with 12 grams of protein, brain nutrients like magnesium and lion's mane, and zero weird stuff. And right now, you can get 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus free shipping. Try our delicious IQ Bar sampler pack with 7 plant protein bars, 4 hydration mixes, and 4 enhanced coffee sticks. Clean ingredients, amazing taste, and you'll love how you feel. Refuel smarter, hydrate harder, caffeinate larger with IQ Bar.
Go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. Again, go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20.
Hope. It's more than a word. It's a breakthrough in the making. At City of Hope, we're pushing the boundaries of science, targeting cancer at the molecular level, with teams of experts working together to personalize a treatment plan right down to your DNA with unprecedented speed, making every second count, with appointments in as little as 24 hours. City of Hope, advancing cancer care at life-saving speed. Learn more at cityofhope.org.
Welcome to the Dogs Podcast with your hosts, Blake Renaker, Justin Charles, and Josh All.
Hey, what's up, Browns fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Dogs Podcast. Josh All, your host yet again. And today is part 2 of my conversation with Oliver George, the UK Browns fan. I know you guys gave me some good feedback on the first part of that episode the other day where we were discussing the Browns 2026 changes to the coaching staff, the free agent additions, and all of that. Today, my conversation with him, this part of the conversation revolves around the NFL draft and the big debate on Twitter, which Oliver's stoking the fire a little bit on his end, and, you know, so am I, from our Twitter account and other social media platforms about whether the Browns should go wide receiver or offensive tackle early in the draft at pick 6, what they can do at 24, and just overall draft philosophy for this team, for this roster as it currently stands. So it's a great conversation. Really hope you guys enjoy it. I'm excited to share that with you. Before we dive into it, make sure you guys go to jointhedogs.com, become a part of our Dog Pack Discord community, join the Patreon. It's all there together at jointhedogs.com. It's a great way to support the show and meet and hang out with Browns fans from across the world. It is such a cool place. A lot of the voicemails you guys hear from the show, which, by the way, again, after this conversation with Oliver that I'm going to share with you guys, I will have a voicemail and a message to get to on the other side of this, so stay tuned for that as well. But jointhedogs.com if you want to be part of the community. All right, let's head over for part 2 with my conversation with Oliver George.
On to a topic that is obviously taking Browns Twitter by storm at the minute. I've called this the Temu version of Chase versus Penei Sewell. Obviously, everyone remembers the conversations that Bengals and those kind of guys were having. Do they draft Chase? Do they draft Penei Sewell? Wide receiver, offensive tackle seems to be the biggest debate, shall we say. We can have this conversation that we're going to have, but we all know that Andrew Berry's going to just go ahead and draft a defensive player anyway, so it doesn't even matter. But what are your thoughts on it? Obviously, I kind of have an idea, but for everyone listening, what is your thoughts on the kind of offensive tackle versus wide receiver at 6 or with a trade back kind of conversation?
So for me, I want Carnell Tate on this roster since the middle of the college football season. Just watching him continue to dominate and break out at Ohio State, I'm like, yep, this is the next great Ohio State wide receiver coming into the NFL. He can take over the number 1 wide receiver role for a team, and he will, probably his first year, definitely within his first couple seasons as a rookie, he's going to establish himself just like Jackson Smith and Jigba ended up establishing himself over, 3 years in Seattle. There's really few situations where you get a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase, a guy that comes in and immediately as a rookie is like one of the best receivers in the league. Now, do these guys come in like Tetairoa McMillan last year? Yes, he's clearly established himself as the one in Carolina. Is he one of the best receivers in the league? Not yet. He's only played 1 year, but you can see the path for it. I am all on board with the Browns doing whatever they think is the best to help our offense because the offense is so freaking bad. If it's a tackle, I'm not going to be mad about it. Do I prefer the wide receiver? Yes. And the reason for that is because I don't think at 6, I'm just not big on this offensive tackle class in the first round overall. The only guy that I would be really excited if they were able to get at 6, I don't think they can, but it would be Francis Mauigoa out of Miami. Now, obviously, he's a right tackle, career-long right tackle. They've already told Titus Howard he's right tackle.
Yep.
Do they draft a right tackle, try to move him over to left? We've done that a couple of times already in the last few years. Hasn't worked. I'm not a big fan of doing that, but I like the prospect. I like the player. Outside of Mauigoa, if you're going to take a tackle high in the draft, I would rather trade back because I don't think Fano's worth taking at 6, passing up some of these other guys that are on the board. And I'm talking defensive guys. Like if a David Bailey, Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, like some of these guys might be a better pick if you're forced to pick at 6 than just trying to force a tackle into there. I like Monroe Freeling. I don't like him at 6. I like Caleb Lomu. I prefer him at 24, and it's really about the value of where you can get these players. And I just think that a guy like Carnell Tate or even Mekhi Lemon, I'm very high on Mekhi Lemon as well, would be worth taking at 6 because if you look at last year's draft, if the Browns would have taken Tetairoa McMillan at 8, would we be happy? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
Well, it's anyone listening that is kind of loves the whole debate side of this kind of thing on Twitter is probably going to be disappointed because I have a similar thing with you where this isn't like one or the other for me. This isn't like if you draft a wide receiver, that's it. Like I'm going to be annoyed. If they draft Carnell Tate at 6, I will be happy. You can see the jersey behind. I'm an Ohio State fan. I think he's a great wide receiver. I'm never going to be annoyed about my team drafting what I think is a great wide receiver from my favorite college. That is just silly. So anyone that thinks that I'm going to be on here saying, no, Josh, you're wrong. Wide receiver is the worst thing you can do. That's not going to happen. So anyone that's kind of got their foaming at the mouth for that, no. But it's the same with you. And it comes down to preference. And for me, as I said, I really like Carnell Tate. Do I think that he's a top 10 receiver that we've seen in the last few years? I'm not so sure. But then I suppose the question of that comes into how many of those have we seen? You mentioned Justin Jefferson. He went 22nd in the draft. Right. Chase went obviously top 10 because it's Jamar Chase, probably the best receiver I've seen come out in the last, 10 years. So that's understandable. So I think for me, you mentioned it there. It's the value game. I look at previous drafts. I look at a draft that, the 21 draft or 22 when you had Garrett Wilson and those, Olave, all of those guys in the draft. And, Garrett Wilson went 10 and Olave went 11th or 12th. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, is Carnell Tate better than those guys? I don't think so. So, you're kind of in a vacuum. Madden brain would think, well, that means you shouldn't take him in the top 10. But then every draft is different. So
exactly,
it's one of those things where I can talk value. I dived into it the other day while having this conversation with someone. We were looking at kind of the all-pro stuff for these positions. And 66% of first-team all-pro selections since 2020 were selections that were drafted in the top 10. And you compare that to wide receiver, that's only 11%. 66% of wide receivers, that all pro selections since 2020 were picked after pick 24, which obviously is where the Browns are picking. So there's clearly value that you can have at 24 and onwards at the wide receiver position that doesn't seem that you can have at the offensive tackle position. But as much as I can sit here and say that, as I just said, every draft is different. Just because you draft Monroe Freeling at 6 doesn't mean that he's a top 10 tackle. That just means that you drafted him at 6. It doesn't mean that every other team would have drafted him at 6. So it's easy for me to sit here and say, well, you draft the tackle because the success rate is higher. There's a clear data that supports that if you draft a tackle in a top 10, there is more chance of them becoming an all-pro than a wide receiver per se. But, I can play this value game all day and it doesn't really matter because, as I said, every draft is different. So I can sit here and say that, yes, my preference is tackle. I've been pronouncing his name wrong for about 4 months now. I've been pronouncing it Mwaga. So how do you pronounce it, Josh?
Maui, like Maui Noah.
Yeah, Maui Noah. So Maui Noah for me is the best offensive lineman in the class.
Yeah.
But he's a right tackle, as you said. He's never played left tackle. Are you comfortable moving another right tackle to left tackle? I'm not so sure. Do you maybe go Titus? Do you want to play left tackle if you draft that guy? Maybe he does. I don't know. So that's where I'm at with it, where my preference would be a tackle. I don't think that taking Monroe Freeling at 6 is necessarily the reach that others think it is. Don't get me wrong. I would, for me, best case scenario would be trade back to anywhere 10 to 12 and still land Monroe Freeling. That would be the best case scenario for me. But I just think, that's my preference. But as I said, with how a lot of these top guys are tackles, right tackles, we're not so sure if they're left tackles. Obviously, the wide receivers as well. I'm not going to be throwing my toys out of a pram if they do go with Carnell Tate at 6. And I don't think you'll be throwing your toys out of the pram, as you said, if they do go with a Mauiaga at 6 as well. So I think it just comes down to the value game of it. And if it is at 6, yes, maybe it's a little bit of a reach for Freeling, but I'd be happy with Freeling there. I'd be happy with Carnell Tate there. I don't think I'd be happy with Lemon at 6, just because of, just the size, the kind of stuff like that. I'm a little bit concerned there. But I suppose your final thought, you kind of mentioned it there. What guys would you be angry with if they took at 6?
Angry if they took at 6? That's a good question. So actually, we can kind of play this game real quick because I've been doing this kind of in my own head and to some people that I talk to, just bouncing ideas off. It's like, okay, so if we're looking at this and we assume the Browns stay at 6 because it's hard to predict a trade back because you got to have so many things fall into place to make that happen. Fernando Mendoza's off the board. So you got only 5 picks ahead of you. No, I'm sorry, 4 picks ahead of you that you really have to worry about. You're assuming Arvell Reese is going to go somewhere in there. So there's 2 guys off the board. And now you're looking at who are the next 3 that are going to go before you're up. Is it David Bailey, Jeremiah Love, Francis Maui Noah? Where does Sonny Styles fall in there? Ruben Bain? Does somebody else take Carnell Tate? Do the Giants take him at 5? And then you don't even have to talk about that. Is Caleb Downs going to the Giants at 5? There's going to be a lot of guys on the board that I think could make the conversation for Cleveland difficult. And the one guy, I know this doesn't really answer your question about who I'd be mad about. One guy maybe you wouldn't expect that I would kind of start pounding the table for if he was on the board at 6. I don't think he will be. But if he is actually Jeremiah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame. Yep. And I know a lot of people, when I say that, they instantly get mad. You can't take a running back in the top 6. I just said I don't think he's going to be available. So somebody's taking him in the top 6.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, we just drafted Quinshon Judkins. This is not a Quinshon Judkins replacement. Jeremiah Love is a Quinshon Judkins partner. I mean, this is a Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, but a higher level of what you saw from the Detroit Lions with those 2 running backs, because I think Quinshon Judkins is way better than David Montgomery.
Yep.
Jeremiah Love is an all-around offensive weapon. And we have been screaming for years that the Cleveland Browns never have the elite offensive playmakers in the NFL. Well, if that one's on the board, how could you pass up an elite offensive playmaker? The thing is, he's not just running back. He's going to be a limited touch guy. You're not going to hand this guy the ball 300 times. That's not his type of ball carrier style. He is a weapon where you give him maybe 200 carries in a season, then you throw him 40, 50 passes, and he's going to be like Jahmyr Gibbs, where it doesn't take volume to be effective. He can break a game wide open on any play. And I think he's more of a generational prospect, maybe than anybody else in this top 10 prospect range for this draft.
I'm happy you brought it up because that's a great conversation to have. And, I, as someone that I kind of spoke about it there, the value game, I can get a little bit caught up on that kind of stuff. I've criticised plenty of teams for drafting running backs in the top 5. I was not a proponent of drafting Saquon Barkley number 1 overall in 2018. Now, number 4, maybe. But obviously some of those mock drafts that had him going number 1 and they were going, well, let's just get him first and then we have our pick of the quarterbacks. I was kind of like, no, I'm not a fan of that. But, you kind of laid it out there. It's one of those that if it happened, if I'm sat there and bearing in mind just a little bit of lore, I'm going on holiday the day after the first round of the draft. I will be literally leaving to go to the airport the minute that the draft ends. So that's going to obviously affect my mood for the flight. And if I'm driving to the airport and the Browns have taken Love, I think my first thought would be, okay, as I said, with the value stuff, with that all of this talk about offensive tackle, which of course is a premium position, all the talk of wide receiver, all the talk of the defensive players. If they took Love, my first reaction would be kind of like a head scratcher like that. But then, as you said, you would start in your brain kind of thinking of the things that you could do with Love, with Quinshon, the things you could do in this offense with him. And I think I wouldn't be against it. So as you kind of said there, when you kind of scratch your head, there's not really any pick here that is going to anger me personally. I mean, don't get me wrong. If they took Blake Miller or something at 6 overall, obviously, right. Yes, I'm going to be sat here going, what on earth are we doing? But none of us expect that to happen. And I think that kind of falls to my last question on the kind of draft kind of thing, which is, if you are sat there at 6 and you kind of said it there, Carnell Tate's gone, Love's gone, maybe, I can't even pronounce his name now. Maui Noah's gone. And you're sat there at 6 and you're going, right, well, I don't think there's any tackle here that's worth picking at 6. I don't think there's any wide receiver here worth picking at 6. Love's off the board. What would be your thoughts if they just went, okay, let's just draft Caleb Downs?
Again, Ohio State fan, Ohio State alum, I can never be mad when they draft a Buckeye, especially one who is and has been projected to be a top 10, even top 5 pick for the entirety of this. Like I've been doing some breakdowns, getting ready for some episodes coming up on my show. I mean, Caleb Downs went to Alabama as a freshman, a true freshman, and dominated in the SEC. 100-plus tackles. I think he had 70 solo, led the entire SEC in solo tackles. Just an absolute monster. I do hear the arguments from people. Maybe some of the downside is his ceiling isn't quite as high as people think it is, but where he's at currently, I think he can come in and be one of the better defenders right away on an NFL defense with room to grow. So there is potential for him to get better and all that kind of stuff. I would not hate Caleb Downs. The Sonny Styles pick to me, and again, here we go with another Buckeye. I would hesitate a little more with Sonny Styles, not because I don't think he's a great player, but just because you mentioned, this is where I kind of come into the premium position or positional value thing. We've got a linebacker coming in here. We have Carson Schlesinger. We just signed Quincy Williams to a 2-year deal. Where would Sonny Styles slot in when those might be your 2 main linebackers on the field most of the time? I understand it'd be a great addition to the defense long term, but right away I just feel like Caleb Downs would be a better instant impact guy, and I'm not convinced they wouldn't consider taking I'm not sure how to say it exactly, Mansour Delane. The cornerback out of LSU. Yep. I think he's the best cornerback in this draft, and we need one of those. Yep. Andrew Berry has drafted corners with higher picks, over his tenure. So some of these guys, and I'm going to put an episode together breaking down some names that I think Browns fans should know, just in case we do a Mason Graham last year where it's like, wait, what? A defensive tackle? This episode is partnered with Kalshi. Browns fans, are you ready to put your money where your predictions are? With Kalshi, America's #1 regulated prediction market, you can legally trade on events that actually matter to you. And the best part is you don't need to predict specific stat lines and compile a 7-leg parlay just to win big. With Kalshi, the objective is either yes or no. Will Shedeur Sanders be the Browns' Week 1 starting quarterback? Will Fernando Mendoza be the first overall pick in the draft? Will the Browns make their pick at 6, or will they trade out of that spot? And in other sports, will the Cavs win the NBA Finals? You can put your money on these predictions and more with Kalshi. If you want to try it out, Kalshi is giving $10 to anyone who signs up at kalshi.com/dogs and trades $100. Get away from disadvantageous sports books and dive into real-world outcomes with real-time odds and real payouts. Head over to Kalshi, KALSHI.com/dogs, DAWGS, or just click the link in the description to get $10 when you trade $100 with Kalshi. Because why shouldn't you get paid for being right?
Craving the coffee flavor you love, but without the caffeine? Kachava's got you covered with their newest coffee flavor. This all-in-one nutrition shake delivers bold, authentic flavor crafted from premium decaffeinated Brazilian beans. Quality nutrition shouldn't be complicated. Just 2 scoops of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake, and you've got 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, and so much more. Whether you're craving that coffee taste to kickstart your morning ritual, or as a nutrient-packed reward to round out your afternoon, Kachava keeps you fueled and satisfied wherever your day takes you. Plus, it actually tastes delicious. No fillers, no nonsense. Just the good stuff your body craves. And for the times you feel like switching it up, you've got 7 flavors to choose from, all with the highest quality ingredients. Treat yourself to the flavor and nutrition your body craves. Go to Kachava.com and use code NEWS. New customers get 15% off their first order. That's KACHAVA.com, code NEWS.
And I'm not going to be shocked. I mean, all this talk about offensive tackle and wide receiver, don't get me wrong, it's where I expect them to go. But we've learned with Andrew Berry that you cannot, you can't just expect him to do something because he will just do the opposite. So, you kind of mentioned it there with Delay. Now, is it LSU he's coming from?
Yes.
Yeah, the cornerback, obviously, I think pretty much everyone agrees that he's the best corner in the draft. You mentioned it there. And that with the Caleb Downs things, that's for me. I mean, I put a tweet out, I think November or October, with the Green Goblin mask from Spider-Man, basically saying that this is going to be me looking at Caleb Downs on the board when we are picking. Because, as I said, if those guys are gone, yes, I'd be happy with a Monroe Freeling. I'd be happy with a Carnell Tate at that pick. But if those, not Monroe Freeling, I don't expect him to be gone before that pick. But if a Tate is gone, I am going to be sat there going, I'm tempted. I am tempted because, the whole kind of BPA stuff, I do subscribe to that. I don't think that you should take a tackle just to say that you took a tackle. So, just to make that clear, I do think that that Freeling is worth that pick. I'm not saying just take him because you get a tackle. I don't believe in that. I don't think that you should draft a wide receiver just to say that you drafted a wide receiver. You shouldn't go into the draft and go, right, well, we need an offensive tackle, so we'll just take an offensive tackle at 6. That's just, I think, bad drafting. So if they are in that situation and they do take a Caleb Downs, I don't think I'm going to be as angry as some other people, and especially at one. But I suppose that last question on Caleb Downs is just, how confident are you of him playing that free safety role? Because I think that is probably the conversation is, well, if you bring him in with a Grant Delpit, who, for me personally, I prefer Grant Delpit a little bit closer to the box. What do you do with those two? I think on one side you can say, well, there's loads of stuff we can do. Think about what we could do in nickel with Carson Schlesinger as well. Those three, think about the stuff we could do. But who plays free safety? I don't think that's one of the questions.
Yeah, I don't think it's Caleb Downs. I think Caleb Downs definitely a closer to the line of scrimmage type of safety. You want him in the box. You want him attacking the line and that. So I know there's been conversations in previous years about bringing in another strong safety type of player closer to the line and then letting Grant Delpit play some free safety. I think he's capable of that. Yeah. That would be the move. But they did put a second-round tender, and for all intents and purposes, Ronnie Hickman will be coming back. And from everything I've been reading and gathering, there will be some sort of probably a 3-year extension worked out with Ronnie Hickman, who is a free safety for us, and he'll start there. So the Caleb Downs conversation then turns into kind of the Sonny Styles. Where does he slot in if you've already got 2 solidified starters in there? And it's tough to pass on premium talent, but then it goes to what you're talking about with positional value and everything like that. I will say, as far as like the top 30 visits, so far, and I know there's a lot of time to go before the draft, so the Browns are going to continue to bring players in here. But as far as pick 6, like in the first round, it's all the wide receivers. They've brought in Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, Jordan Tyson, the top 3 projected receivers. They haven't brought in anybody else so far for a top 30 visit that's projected around that pick 6. Now, they might host Francis Mariano. I'm sure they'll bring in Monroe Freeling. I'm sure they're going to talk to these guys. And they already have at the combine and things. But as far as the 30 visits go, they're taking at least one wide receiver, probably 2 in the first 3 picks based on what they're doing. They've really honed in on the guys projected to go early. They've honed in on the guys that are going to go at 24 in that range, and they've honed in on the guys that are going to go around pick 39 in the second round with like Chris Bell and Jeremy Bernard. And there's definitely going to be a wide receiver taken with those first 3 picks. Will it be at 6? I don't know, but I love this conversation we're having because this is the kind of stuff they're talking about as well. Like, well, if this situation plays out, if that one, if Tate's gone, and I know a lot of people want to say, well, trade back to 10 or 12 to take Freeling. I think that would be okay if you're very, very confident you can get him. But I know the Detroit Lions have been linked to Monroe Freeling. I think they're picking 17. Well, if you traded back to 12, what's stopping them from moving up to 11?
Yep.
Right in front of you to take him.
Rams at 13. They worry me. Do they take Monroe Freeling? And last thing on Monroe Freeling, would the timeline of would he have recruited Monroe Freeling when he was at Georgia?
No, I've been asked that, and I believe Monroe Freeling was a freshman. I forget exactly what year it was. It was either the first year that Monken was in Baltimore or the second year.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So there's probably not much of a fit, but just finally,
because Freeland's young. He's super young. It's not like he's been in college for 3-4. He's a young guy. I think he's only 20, 21.
Yeah. I mean, I think he'll be 21 for his entire first season, or maybe turns 22 halfway through the season. But just to put a bow on where I'm at with it, and kind of as you said there, I mean, that is my worry with a Monroe Freeling and with the left tackle, and this is why it is my preference because. I spoke about the value game. We can talk historical value. I don't think, I can spend all day talking about that. I don't think any of that actually matters because it's a different draft every single year. But one thing that I do think matters is the value between the players that I think that you can get at both positions at 6 versus 24. And that's why I kind of come down of my preference being tackle because I don't think, I would bet everything I own that the top 3 tackles will not be there at 24. I would bet every single item that I own, my flat, everything, my car, have it all. Whereas, don't get me wrong, I think it's very, very unlikely, but I do think there's a slim chance that maybe a Tyson falls to a 24 just because of the injuries. And so where I'm at there, and it's like, well, if that's maybe a possibility, I also don't think the gap between guys like a Boston, like a Cooper, Concepcion, these kind of guys, I really like Chris Bell. Obviously, you'd have to be comfortable with the fact that with the injury, et cetera, stuff like that. But I just think that the gap between what wide receiver that I can get at 6 versus 24 is smaller than the gap between what tackle I can get at 6 and 24. And anyone that disagrees with me on that, will say, well, Caleb Lomu and these kind of guys. But to me, I mean, Caleb Lomu is arguably the second most legitimate left tackle. We've all talked about the top tackles. A lot of these guys are right tackles. I think a team is going to reach, shall we say, on a Caleb Lomu because he is a legitimate left tackle and is someone that has proved to play left tackle. And I think of the Eagles there at 23. So that's just why I fall down to the preference of I would rather a tackle. But as I said at the start, I'm not someone that's going to throw my toys out of the pram if they take Carnell Tate at 6. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be supporting him, obviously, and hoping that he has a great season. And I think that would be the same whether it was Love, whether it was Caleb Downs, David Bailey. I mean, maybe David Bailey, I'd be a little bit more like, guys, do we really need another defensive lineman? But he is very good. So that's kind of where my kind of final thoughts on that are. Do you have any final thoughts on it for you, or?
Yeah, no, and I love having this conversation with you because I am the inverse of how you feel. I feel like the gap between Carnell Tate and Mekhi Lemon going down to like a Boston, and I do love Omar Cooper Jr. and Casey Concepcion, these guys, but I feel like there is a bigger gap there than the tackles I could get at 24. It's just funny to hear the different perspective. And that's why there's so much discourse online, because everybody has their taste and their perspective, and that's totally fine. I look at a guy like Caden Proctor, the true left tackle, I keep telling my audience, if you want a true left tackle, you got 3 options here in the first round. You got Monroe Freeling, you got Caleb Lomu, you got Caden Proctor, and list. And I feel like with Freeling and Proctor, both guys, you're drafting based on traits. You are drafting based on, I think this guy's got super high potential because of his athletic traits. He's not refined. Neither one is ready to just plug right in and be confident in. There's no Joe Thomas in this class.
No.
But I've been reading some stuff too from, NFL people that have connections to the coaches and scouts. They think Caden Proctor is going to go top 15.
Yeah.
So that speaks to what you're saying about a team saying, well, hey, here's a true left tackle. I'm just going to take him. And I think that will start to happen after you get past the top 10.
Yeah, and that's my worry as well, is that I do think that there's more of a chance that we see a run on tackles in those teams than we do at wide receiver. And you kind of mentioned it with Detroit, with the Rams. I mean, Steelers at 21, do they take a tackle? Knowing our luck, somehow Monroe Freeling will fall to them at 21, just knowing by how it goes. But Caden Proctor is one of them that, how you like. I think everyone that does this, they'll have one draft guy that they trust more than others. And my one draft guy has pretty much for the whole year been telling me, do not buy into Caden Proctor. Do not buy into Caden Proctor. This is an athlete that can't play the position. And I kind of never forgot about that. And I keep, every time I watch him and every time I find myself like, oh, well, maybe actually Caden Proctor, I just hear this guy in the back of my head going, no. But
it's funny. I do mock drafts and stuff on the show, every now and again, and I'll be putting together my document. And I'm like, hey, Caden Proctor here at 24. I don't know if I want to do it.
Yeah, it does scare me.
Bring myself to do it.
Of all the ones that would scare me in terms of like you're doing the kind of upside projection, that one would scare me. But then I suppose if you're doing that at 24 versus 6 with maybe a Monroe Freeling, because I understand that, I can sit here and say that I think Monroe Freeling is further along than maybe some people are saying. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that he's day one going to be a top 10 tackle. But for him, I keep going back to Tristan Wirfs. And don't get me wrong, Tristan Wirfs obviously had a bit more experience. I think was a little bit more pro ready. But a lot of the conversations that year was, well, this is a guy that, kind of needs to grow into his body a little bit. He's got all of the athletic traits. He's got all of the testing traits. And we saw us go with the more pro-ready guy, shall we say, in Jed Wills. And obviously we've been sat there ever since going, oh, my God, why on earth did we not take Tristan Wirfs? So that is kind of also in the back of my mind with a Monroe Freeling as well. But
I will say,
I'll put a bow on that.
I do like Monroe Freeling as a prospect. Yeah. I am hesitant to do it at 6.
Yeah.
Like you said about Carnell Tate, am I going to be mad if they take Monroe Freeling? No, I'm going to get very excited and say, okay, I do this with everybody. Same with Todd Monken. As soon as you become a Cleveland Brown, whether or not I like the decision or the move to bring somebody here, that's separate from whether or not I'm going to root for. I'm going to root for you until you give me a reason not to. Yeah. So like Jed Wills, rooted for him until he gave me a reason not to. And it's like, get this guy's ass out of here. But if you take, I think Monroe Freeling, again, just the 1-year starter at Georgia, but it was a really good year. It was a really great season. I think he only allowed 8 total pressures all year, 2 sacks. For the first year ever playing and starting left tackle in the SEC, it was impressive. I was definitely impressed with him.
Yeah, and I mean, final bow on it, and I promise final bow on it, but I suppose that is another thing as well with these tackles, is that if you hit on tackle, if you draft a Slater, a Joe Alt, that's your tackle for the next decade. Right. There's no question about it. That is your tackle for the next decade. Wide receivers, not as much of a certainty. And, we can say, yes, if you have a good guy, you're going to pay him, etc. But we've seen Tyreek Hill get traded in his prime, essentially. We've seen top wide receivers. We just saw Waddle get traded, even though they have no other wide receivers. So I feel like there's more of a chance of a tackle being on your team for a decade than there is a wide receiver. And I think that kind of plays into a little bit as well. And maybe that's because these tackles aren't quite as much as divas, shall we say. If a tackle gets somewhere, they don't really, they're not thinking, well, actually, if I go play in Miami, there's more clubs in Miami that I could know. I don't think the offensive tackles, the grass-fed offensive tackles from that part of the country are caring too much about that stuff. So I think that plays a part of it as well. But moving off of the draft stuff, because, you'll be the same. We're going to be having so many draft conversations on our channels, etc. over the next, a month now, is it, until the start?
Yeah.
It's the biggest event of the off-season calendar. Obviously looking forward to it, and I will try and get as much stuff while I'm on holiday done for it while it's coming out.
This episode is sponsored by ButcherBox for Pets. Browns fans, we love our fellow dogs, our Dog Pack members, and the Dog Pound faithful, but let's not kid ourselves. The most important dogs in our lives are, well, our dogs. Your furry friends aren't just pets, they're part of the family. But the question is, what are you actually feeding them? Head to butcherbox4pets.com/products to see all the options for your dogs, including fresh and dry foods, treats, meal toppers, and even toys for your dog. If you're not sure what your dog will like best, try the Premium Nutrition Adult Starter Pack. And they even have a vacation bundle to take care of your four-legged friends while you're on vacation this summer. And right now you can get 20% off your order with promo code DAWGS, DAWGS, when you check out. At ButcherBox, they believe in real ingredients. Their pet foods have been developed and certified by vet nutritionists to contain zero artificial flavors or preservatives. You get protein-packed formula with over 50% of the recipe comprised of third-party certified humane ButcherBox meat, plus functional ingredients like pre- and postbiotics to support your dog's vitality and digestion. I know that sounds like a lot, but the bottom line is your dogs are getting the nutrition and the value they need, and honestly, that they deserve. I know our home wouldn't be the same without Odie, our 100-pound golden retriever who thinks he's a 10-pound lap dog. He is not, but it gives us peace of mind knowing that we're giving him quality food instead of just that factory processed garbage from the store. And speaking of the store, no need to go. ButcherBox for Pets delivers their high-quality food right to your door. So head to butcherboxforpets.com/products and use promo code DAWGS, DAWGS, for 20% off your order. It's time for us dogs to give our dogs the nutrition they deserve. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that part of the conversation with Oliver talking about everything that has to do with the draft that is coming so quickly. Here, let's see, it's the end of March right now. We got April rolling in. Before you know it, we're going to be hosting Round 1 live on YouTube. So make sure you guys mark that in your calendars, April 23rd. It's kicking off at 7:45, and we'll be with you through the first round. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Everything I discussed with Oliver, and I know this was really the part of the episode I recorded with him where we did not fully agree on things for the Browns. He is more of the get me an offensive tackle earlier in the draft. I look at the draft class and I just don't see the gap between the tackles like I do with the wide receivers. So let me know your guys' thoughts. And actually, that conversation leads right into the first message here. I want to read from the website. Again, go to thedogspodcast.com, tap leave voicemail. You can also type a message and send it in just like Preston did. Here, he says, hey, it's Preston again from Charlotte. I figured I should type instead of send a voicemail for less ums and such. Hey, Preston, don't you guys, any of you guys worry about ums and uhs or any of that stuff in your voicemails. Just send them in. Send them in. If you have a leg in your thoughts or any long silence or mistakes that you end up sending in, I usually do pre-listen to the voicemails, and I can edit that stuff out for you guys. So no worries on that, and we love hearing from you. So Preston continues on here. He says, I have a lot to ask. I'm going to send more messages if that works. My main question is another one about the draft. He says, with how well, on paper, Andrew Berry addressed the offensive line in free agency, I think he left a vacancy at the left tackle spot on purpose. Let me get to the point. I think maybe the Browns could look at Spencer Fano from Utah to play whatever tackle they need him at. I've heard he has experience on the left side, which we do need more, but he is better on the right side. Then again, as much as I love him, the last thing I want is another Jed Will situation where we draft a right tackle and play him on the left side. Not everyone can be Tristan Wirfs. Preston says, however, I'm pretty adamant about Fano being the best tackle in the class, and I'd like to hear your opinions on him. With his talent, I do think he'll probably be available at 6, but I highly doubt he'll be there at 24. He will 100% be there at 6, and I'll get to that. Plus, Preston says, we could still maybe draft Lomu and get some chemistry with our tackles. They did play together at Utah. But I do think wide receiver is a glaring need. Barry telegraphed that to both us as fans and the rest of the NFL. I do really like Tate at 6 if he's there, but I also like Tyson, Lemon, or maybe even Concepcion. Tyson and Concepcion are probably the most realistic. However, I do kind of like the idea of trading up into the mid-first round with the Jaguars' first-round pick and maybe a second/third rounder to get Lemon or Tyson. Concepcion will likely be there at 24, or maybe even the second round. That's pretty much all I have for now, but expect to hear back from me again. Go Browns and go Bucks. All right, Preston, thank you for the message. Let's talk about Spencer Fano. So I know you're telling me you think he's the best tackle in the class, and listen, I do like Spencer Fano, the player, but when I'm looking at Spencer Fano, and here's where I get held up on him. 6'5", 310 pounds. This dude's going to need to add some mass to his body. He's going to need to add some weight if he's going to anchor down on the end of the line. The big hang up for me, 32 1/8 inch arms. So barely over 32 inches. We've talked about the arm length. We can debate it. We can discuss whether it's the end-all, be-all. I don't think it is the end-all, be-all. I think it's an important deciding factor on where a guy's going to play ultimately at the NFL level. He may very well get drafted and start out at tackle. 32-inch arms, that's just what we'll call it, because the 1/8 doesn't do much for me at all. If you're under 33, it's really difficult to play the tackle position, especially when you're underweight for holding down the edge. I think he's going to play guard. I think Spencer Fano, he started out playing left tackle at Utah, moved over to right tackle when Caleb Lomu came to Utah, and then he became the starting left tackle. I think Spencer Fano he's going to get drafted in the first round, but I think he will ultimately be playing guard in the NFL. So for me, that's a tough sell. That's a tough sell in the first round, especially when you have other tackles who are better profiled, better fit, better sized to play tackle, especially if you're trying to put somebody at left tackle. I keep saying it. I've said it. I'll say it again. Left tackle, if that's what you want in the first round, an actual left tackle who actually played left tackle in college football, Monroe Freeling from Georgia, Caden Proctor from Alabama, and Caleb Lomu, the other Utah tackle who played left tackle. So that's where I'm at with the tackles. And I got to tell you guys, and I've been saying it, and I'm going to keep saying it too. I'm not changing on this. I keep doing more reading, evaluation on these tackles, on these wide receivers, and the whole debate between the two positions. I don't see a whole lot of drop. I don't see a whole lot of differentiation between, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 6 tackles. The top 6 tackles after Francis Mauigoa. I think Francis Mauigoa is a tier of his own. When it comes to these tackles in this class, I think he is a day one starter with immediate Pro Bowl upside. Like, he doesn't need to develop into that ceiling. I think he can already slide right into it and then continue to grow, obviously, as all these rookies do. But I think he starts out at a much higher level than any of these other guys. And then after that, it's, and I'm looking at the NFL draft profile listing here in the grades, but then it goes Caden Proctor, Spencer Fano, Monroe Freeling, Caleb Lomu, Max Ihenacho, and Blake Miller. So that's the next 6. And if you talk to me from Caden Proctor down to Blake Miller, that is this next tier of tackles. I don't see a whole lot of difference here. I might actually prefer Blake Miller over the top guy in this tier, Caden Proctor. So that's my argument for not taking a tackle early. And it's not because I don't value the positions, because I don't value the level of tackle prospects in this class high enough to take one all the way up at 6. Because again, after Francis Mauigoa, I don't have a whole lot separating Caden Proctor from Blake Miller. And in between there, that's Fano, Freeling, Lomu, Ihenacho. Like, there's a lot of tackles here I think we should be able to pick between at 24. I know I keep seeing people say, well, there's going to be a run on tackles. Tackles are going to go early. Tackles. I mean, we were sitting there last year in the draft, and Josh Simmons from Ohio State, who was one of the top tackles in the draft last year, ended up going, what did he go, 27, 28? I think that there's a lot of good players, not high-level, elite caliber type players in this draft, but a lot of good players in this first round. I don't see all these tackles getting drafted before 24. That would be insane. And if that happens, well, then you got your pick of the litter of some really great players at 24. So I'm not forcing a tackle at 6 just for the sake of forcing a tackle. I'm not going to do it. I posted this on social media earlier. My issue with Monroe Freeling is when the college football season ended for Georgia on New Year's Day in early January, Monroe Freeling was projected to go 79th overall in the draft per mock draft database. His aggregate draft position was 79 in the third round. He was a third round projection in January. Fast forward now a few months later, we had, the combine and all this hype and stuff. And you talk about post-combine risers. He went from 79 projected to now he's being mocked at 6 overall to the Browns. That is too big of a rise for me. It just doesn't work. I cannot be sold on that. To go from being projected at 79 clear to 6, that's like danger zone for me. Buyer beware. Versus a Carnell Tate, who you guys, he's my preference at 6. Carnell Tate has never, if you go look at the history on Mock Draft Database, they have the chart, the graph that shows the history of where he's been projected over the last 3-4 months. Never has Carnell Tate been projected outside the top 10. Where's he projected right now today at the end of March, a month before the draft? Still top 10. So that means that the opinion of the community, the industry, the draft analyst has not wavered on Carnell Tate. He was projected as a top 10 pick at the end of the college football season. He remains projected as a top 10 pick. Now, obviously, none of this stuff solidifies and means that there's a 100% hit rate on he's going to be a top, receiver just because of that. But it's a better indicator of their future success in the NFL when you got a guy that was a couple months ago projected to go mid-third round, and now you're talking about him in the top 10? I just get a little apprehensive about that versus a guy who was projected 4 months ago to go top 10 and still projected to go top 10. So that's where I am, Preston. Thank you for the message. Again, I'm not out on Spencer Fano, but I am questioning whether or not he'll actually play tackle in the NFL. If I had to put money on anything right now, I would bet that he ends up playing guard in the NFL. So thank you for the message, and I'm looking forward to hearing what your next ones are as soon as you send them in. Remember, hey, voicemails are fine too. And I got a voicemail here, and this one is from Liam.
What's going on, Dog Podcast? It's Liam calling in from Calgary, Alberta, and I'm listening to your guys' newest episode here, and I heard Josh talk about, at the beginning of the episode, potentially exploring what if the Browns go a defensive player in the first round of the drafts. And me personally, I think that, I know I'm crazy for this, but I think that Caleb Downs is the right pick for the Browns at number 6. Let me know what you guys think about that. With all this news about Ronnie Hickman potentially not coming back, I think Downs would be the perfect draft pick at 6, even if Carnell Tate's on the board. I know I said it. It sounds crazy. I also wanted to say, you're talking a lot about fantasy football at the end of this episode. And just so you guys know, if I get into one of these leagues next year with you guys are in for a long season. I am the GOAT of fantasy football. I have a trophy, a ring from my fantasy football leagues in my room, bro. I'm ready to compete with you guys, and go Dogs. Woo woo.
Okay, Liam, that is awesome. Well, hey, man, as long as you're in the dog pack, as long as you're a member of the community at jointhedogs.com, all you got to do is, as soon as the registration opens up in June, is just put your name on the registration and you are in the fantasy leagues to compete against one of us or maybe even two of us, depending on how many people we have signed up for the leagues this year. We had so many leagues last year. We got 3 dynasty leagues going on in the dog pack. It's insane. So much fantasy football being played. So I am very much looking forward to the competition with you, Liam. Maybe I'll just go ahead and try to slot you into one of my leagues, and we'll see how it goes, because I like to think I'm pretty good at fantasy football. Last year was kind of a down year for me. The injuries were insane, and that's kind of the problem. I get into a draft philosophy of players I like, players I don't like, and I tend to take a lot of the same players across my leagues because of that. And then when one guy gets injured, I'm screwed in all my leagues for the most part. So that sucks. But Liam, looking forward to that. As far as Caleb Downs goes, man, listen, I really do want Carnell Tate. I don't know how many more times I'm going to say that before April 23rd, but probably a lot. I like Caleb Downs. And I know there's been some cold water being thrown on the fire for Caleb Downs here recently. And just some of the draft analysts starting to kind of question, well, what's his true upside? What's his true ceiling? Is he just kind of a very good player, not a very great player? What can he actually be in the NFL? Listen. This kind of stuff happens every year with a lot of these prospects. You get draft fatigue. The industry, the pay-per-click industry of ESPN writers and those type of CBS Sports, whatever. You got to find and facilitate new ways to get people to engage with your content. And that's why I used to do a pay-per-click thing, and it didn't last very long for me. I did not like it. Because that's just not the way I operate. I think we're getting draft fatigue, prospect fatigue with Caleb Downs. He's been talked about as a first-round pick, as an elite caliber player since year one, freshman season at Alabama. This guy came on the scene, and it was like, holy cow, this kid is going to be an amazing NFL player. And he has just continued that. He transferred to Ohio State and has just continued. I mean, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed about Caleb Downs, and that gets boring. That gets boring whenever you're writing about these things every single day, and you got to try to get people to engage with your stuff or else you don't get paid, yada, yada, yada. So now let's create a little controversy around Caleb Downs. Maybe he's not all that good like we thought he was. Yes, he is. So would I be mad about Caleb Downs at 6? No. Liam, I'm with you. I wouldn't be mad about it. For me, it speaks more to Andrew Berry continuing to invest in the defensive side of the ball and neglect the offensive side of the ball. That's the part of it that bothers me. And because he's done it so much over the years, it has created this lopsided, unequal balance between the offense and the defense where, let's just be honest, and I keep telling you it's going to happen next week, I believe, is whenever I'm going to give you guys my episode on other prospects we should be keeping an eye on for the Browns that aren't wide receiver and aren't offensive linemen. There's a lot of defensive guys. If we're really going to talk BPA, best player available, when the Browns pick at 6, a lot of those names are defensive guys. A lot of those names are on the defensive side of the ball, and Caleb Downs is probably at the top of that list potentially. So it's a real possibility. He'll be on that list. Not more so as a mention because we've covered him a lot. Everybody knows about Caleb Downs. I don't need to waste too much time talking about what he does very well. But yeah, he would be a great addition. I talked about that with, I think it was it George or Oliver George in this episode here? It's been a couple of days since I recorded that with him, so I can't remember exactly. Maybe I talked with Kenny Mack, but you could move Grant Delpit more into a free safety type role. And then you could draft somebody else if you wanted to take 2 safeties a little bit later. They're very good with their UDFAs. We've got Donovan McMillan, UDFA from last year, who I think could probably rotate in and be a good depth component to the safety room. I wouldn't hate Caleb Downs as much as I really just don't want to go defense. We do have to at least consider the possibility and talk about it because last year we spent the entire draft season saying the Browns need to go offense with at least their first 4 picks. Don't even think about taking a defensive player. And then the draft started. And what they do, they took 2 defenders with the first 2 picks. So it's very possible, as much as we feel like it's not, it is a possibility. So it's worth talking about. And we'll continue to list these guys as the month rolls along here because we're not too far away, guys, from the NFL draft. Drop your comments and your thoughts and everything below. Let me know what you guys think about all this. How did you like my conversation with Oliver? I got one more component, one more part of this conversation to give you guys, and we discuss the quarterback position and our thoughts on Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, and any other possible additions to that quarterback room the Browns could make between now and training camp. So stay tuned for that one. Should be coming out here in the next day or so. Again, thank you guys for tuning in, hanging out with me during these episodes, engaging with me in the comments. Like I always tell you, I cannot get to every single comment, unfortunately, between Twitter and TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And it's just, there's so many comments, and I appreciate all of them, but I read all of them, even if I'm not responding. So make sure you guys continue to engage. I really appreciate that. Again, jointhedogs.com if you want to be part of the community and hang out with us a little more exclusively and get a little more direct access to me, Blake, Justin, Kenny Mack, everybody else that you hear on the show. Hang out with us in the Dog Pack Discord episodes. All of that stuff can be found and done at jointhedogs.com. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Let's go Browns.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dogs Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at The Dogs Podcast. Get your thoughts on the show at thedogspodcast.com.
This episode is sponsored by ISSA. Browns fans, if you're into health and fitness, have you ever wondered how you could maybe turn those hobbies and your passion into an actual career? If that sounds interesting to you, then ISSA has the opportunity you've been looking for. ISSA is the International Sports Science Association, and they can help you become a certified personal trainer in as little as 3 months. And right now you can get $100 off your certification when you sign up through our link, joinissa.com/dogs, DAWGS. Now, certifications are 100% online, self-study, and self-paced. You can study anywhere from your phone, tablet, or computer. And the final exam is open note, open book, aka piece of cake. Except you fitness nuts probably don't eat a ton of cake, so let's just call it a piece of delicious protein bar. And ISSA has the #1 job guarantee in the industry. If you get certified and sign up to be a certified trainer with ISSA, you have a job guarantee or your money back. ISSA has over 10,000 gym partners that have over 73,000 open jobs for trainers right now. And you don't need a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree. You just need your certification to qualify for these jobs. So what are you waiting for? With certification this simple, there's no excuse not to pursue your passion and become a certified personal trainer today. Get $100 off your certification at joinissa.com/dogs. You've wanted to make a change long enough. Now it's time to do something about it. That's joinissa.com/dogs for $100 off your personal trainer certification.